It's great to have on for the first time today the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore. Governor, so good to have you on. Really appreciate it.
Is my pleasure, man. I'm excited to do it.
So, listen, because you haven't been on before, I want to go back a little bit to an incident back in August of 2025,
Hmm.
where the president said you privately acknowledged that he's the greatest president and doing a wonderful job, which I was skeptical that you really said that to him. Can you just talk us through the origin story of what went down? And this happened around the same time that there was video of you, I think simply as the governor saying hello to him. I believe it was at a football game.
That's exactly right. It was at the Army Navy game, and the Army Navy game was taking place in my state. But also as an Army guy, like I don't like missing Army Navy games, period, because I just want to see the Army win. And they're like, the president elect would like to meet you, and I was like, that's cool. And so he comes up, and as soon as I saw him, I said, welcome back to Maryland, Mr. President. And the first thing he said to me, he says, "You're a really good looking guy in person." And I was just like, thank you, Mr. President. I was like, go Army. And then he said, how can I help you? And then I started talking about, he told me, he said, my people are telling me you're doing a really good job. And he said, how can I help you? And I said, I want to talk to you about the bridge, because months before I met him, we had one of the most tragic moments in our state's history when the Key Bridge collapsed after
Yep.
being hit by a ship. And told him what we're working on. This is the fastest moving major project in the country right now. And somehow that conversation in his own mind turned into me telling him that he was the greatest president of my lifetime. So it was fascinating hearing his recollection of something that just never happened.
Yeah, it was a slight exaggeration, I guess, of what you said. Listen, I want to talk about Maryland and specifically Baltimore, because as we saw the 2 by 3 block radius of Los Angeles that was supposedly chaotic enough to support militarizing law enforcement there by the president. And then what we've seen up through and including in Minneapolis, which includes a number of different tragedies and abuses of power.
Yeah.
Baltimore has been in the conversation for the White House in terms of we might go there next. Have you had official conversations with the White House about that, or has it mostly been strategizing within the state of Maryland about what you would do if that were to come to pass?
Well, no, I mean the really powerful thing is that whenever the president was making these tropes about Baltimore and our chaos and the violence, the reality is that he just had no data to reinforce it.
Hmm.
In fact, what we saw was that since I've been the governor, we've actually done something really unique, which is work together with local law enforcement, with local leadership, the mayor of Baltimore, county executives around the state. And now the violent crime in Maryland is down nearly 50% since I have been the governor. It is the fastest drop of anywhere in the United States of America. And that in Baltimore City, the last time the homicide rate was this low, I wasn't born yet. And so when the president is talking about the lawlessness, I just told him, I said, I would love for you to take a walk with me around our communities and see what I see, which is actually people working together to address an issue that was a crisis before we took over. But now we have seen the fastest drops in violent crime anywhere in the United States of America. So, as someone who's also a military veteran, I take a personal and a specific offense to him just using our military personnel like they're just toy soldiers. But also was very clear that if you're looking for places of chaos and lawlessness, don't come to Maryland, because that doesn't exist here.
One of the things that I find really interesting about your approach on crime, and to sort of zoom out to the 30,000-foot level just a little bit, one of the things that's really tough about these conversations about crime is that on the one hand, when you have higher population density, you have more crime. It's just sort of like a statistical reality. At the
Yep.
same time, we have decades of crime reduction in the United States that is sort of the background rate. And so whenever anybody wants to point to statistics, we have to remember that this is a country that for 30 years has seen a reduction in both violent and nonviolent crime rates. And then you have to go further and say, in a particular area, is there a policy that has bent the line one way or the other? But with that sort of as the context, you've taken an approach that is not a defund the police approach. In other words, you've identified, it seems as though law enforcement may need more resources in some places and in certain ways,
That's right.
which can include training, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of your left approach to this issue versus the we've got to defund approach that we've seen from some on the left?
Yeah, I mean, because for me, this is not driven by a political ideology. We drive it by data. And the thing I wanted to do is say we have to both increase accountability and increase opportunity.
Hmm.
So yes, we made historic investments in local law enforcement in the state of Maryland. I believe that they do play an important role in making sure the communities feel safe. That we did invest in both our state's attorneys and also our public defenders, and making Maryland one of the only state that actually helps to fund the U.S. attorney out of balance sheet. Because if someone commits a violent crime, particularly a violent crime with a firearm, I want them in handcuffs in 24 hours, and they will be held to account. Yet at the same time, we are going to deal with the root causes. It's the reason that when I came on board, I said that Maryland is going to have the most aggressive and bipartisan push to end child poverty in the state of Maryland. And I'm proud of the results that we have been able to drive on this issue. But the reason that I was explaining to people that it isn't just because I think child poverty is an embarrassment in any civilized society. It's also because if you care about public safety, focus on ending child poverty. Because oftentimes you see the areas that have to deal with poverty and oftentimes concentrated and generational poverty. They're
Right.
also the places that deal with the heaviest levels of violence. So increase accountability and increase opportunity. And I think that's been the formula that we have been using, and it's a formula that's working.
So to go back from crime to the federalization, militarization stuff, when we spoke to Governor Shapiro, for example, or we've looked at what Governor Pritzker did when it looked like maybe Trump was interested in Chicago as a target, and we're seeing what Governor Walz is now dealing with in Minnesota. What would be your approach if it came to the point at which, yes, Baltimore is our next stop for the president? What is the plan that you have in place?
Well, I remember when the president was threatening that last summer, and he was talking about the deployment of our National Guard. And I was very clear. I am the commander in chief of the Maryland National Guard, not the president.
Hmm.
The governor is the commander in chief. They move on the orders of the commander in chief. I'm very clear on where lines of authority begin. I'm very clear on where lines of authority end. And I'm also very clear that we have remarkably trained citizen soldiers in our National Guard. And frankly, they deserve the respect of a commander in chief who actually does not use them randomly or for political purposes, but actually understands the lives that they live. And so, so our ability to show that you can drive down violent crime, our ability to show that you can lead by constitutional policing and not by authoritarian takeovers, that you can actually work with community to drive down crime in neighborhoods and not think that the National Guard, instead of being there to decrease violence, you're actually there to incite it. There is a better approach. And I think that what Maryland is showing is that in this moment, we're not just there to push back, but we can actually show a way to push forward and show that there's a better direction and there's a better way from the type of chaotic decision-making that we're seeing from Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
Governor Walz said he fears his state could end up in a situation where it's ICE agents up against essentially members of the Minnesota National Guard, which would be a tragedy. And it would also be a real tangible issue that's got to be sorted out.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? Is there a scenario where you would say, this is too much? We actually need to use the Maryland National Guard to stop ICE?
Well, the truth is that we're already there. The fact that Governor Walz even has to have this conversation, and Governor Walz is not only a colleague, but he's a friend. And us as governors, we actually have a very close relationship. I'm currently the vice chair of the National Governors Association. And so I work with both Democratic and Republican governors. And this violation of state rights that we are seeing, this violation of basic fundamental authorities and understanding, what is the proper usage of these type of responsibilities and forces, has just been staggering to both Democratic and Republican governors. So, so I think for all of us, there are a collection of scenarios that we now have to spend time thinking through, that we have to spend time preparing for, that we know should not have to be the things that are on top of mind, when we should be focusing on things like bringing down the cost of living for the people of our states, making sure that people can feel safer in our communities, making sure that our states can be more economically competitive against our neighbors. Those are the things that we should be zeroing in and focusing on. And it's just heartbreaking to me that colleagues like Tim have to focus on things like should my National Guard prepare to do battle against ICE? This shows the level of insanity to the place that we're in right now.
So it sounds like you have thought about what that would be like. You're maybe not ready to tell us exactly what milestones it would take, but you've thought about what it would take and how you would react.
Oh, absolutely. I think the unfortunate thing is that as governors, we are now having to spend time running scenarios that we should never have to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Our focus should be on making sure that we're bringing down the cost of prices, making sure that we're making our states more competitive. Frankly, it's the things that the president of the United States should be focusing on.
Right.
It's the thing that he ran on, and instead of doing that, he's focusing on starting wars in other countries and increasing violence in his own.
Governor, last thing I want to ask you about, you made a statement when you were asked, you are not running for president in 2028.
That's right.
Only people that are being thought of in that way usually would make such a statement. Like if I said it, well, actually, I wasn't even born in the US, so I couldn't be president. But if I said it, nobody would care because it's like, yeah, we know, David, you're not running, nor can you be president. Tell me about the thought process and what is it about that job that is interesting versus not interesting, and why it was something that you knew years ahead of time you were not going to be doing in 2028?
I think about why I ran for governor. I had people who were coming up to me before I ever decided to run for any office. And after one of my mentors, Elijah Cummings, after he died, where they were encouraging me to run for his congressional seat. He was a dear friend and a mentor of mine. And I thought about it and I said, that's not what I think I should be doing. And I love Elijah Cummings and his family and his advisors. Yep. But I just told them, I said, that's not what I think I should be doing. There was nothing that anyone could have told me to get me to run for Congress. Fast forward, when I made the decision that I wanted to run for governor, when I made the decision that I wanted to end child poverty in the state of Maryland, when I made the decision that I wanted to go through this process of being the state's chief executive, there were a lot of people who were in my ear telling me I shouldn't do it. That you can't win, that you're in 13th place, you're polling at 1%. This is going to be really bad for you. There's nothing anyone could have told me to get me not to run. That my mind was set. And so I'm very thankful that people around the country are noticing that, since I've been the governor, we've seen the fastest drops in violent crime anywhere in the United States of America, that we've added over 35,000 new businesses in the state of Maryland, over close to 100,000 new jobs. That Maryland now has a population that's growing for the first, at a faster rate than we've seen in a decade. Yep. That Maryland is bucking trends and Maryland is moving. And I'm thankful that people are taking notice. But I'm also really excited about running for re-election and winning this November in a way that is not just going to be an election win, but in a way that's going to send a message.
Are you ready to rule out 2032? Could you do that for us? Not yet, right? I mean, it's so far away. We shouldn't get so far ahead of ourselves.
Listen, I have learned at the pace of the Trump years that March is so far away.
It's too far. Exactly. Listen, Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, so glad to have had a chance to chat with you today. Really appreciate your time. And I know my audience is paying really close attention to what you're doing in the state of Maryland.
Thank you, man. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.